Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Emma's last event of the year. And we're closing with an event in collaboration with EMI, our Emma Market Spotlight on Iceland. Lovely to see so many of you here. My name is Michelle Ronquillo, and I am Emma's event manager, and I will be moderating today's session. Before we start, just a little bit about us. Within EMA, we unite music managers organizations across 16 European countries, which represent more than 3,000 managers across Europe. We've made it our mission to strengthen European managers globally through our Empower program, which encompasses education, advocacy, networking, and research. Empower is a project co-founded by the European Union. If you want to know more about us or about our upcoming events, sign up to our newsletter, visit our website, follow us on social media, join our dedicated WhatsApp group. And yeah, I will put all the links in the chat or email us. We're always happy to hear from you. I'm also going to share in the chat general managers contact list where you can leave the details of others, and also so you can leave your details and find the details of others. And when you log off Zoom at the end of the session, there's going to be a super brief survey that will pop up automatically. So please, if you can take a minute to fill it up, it will help us improve our upcoming events. So I'm going to share the agenda of the day. Please bear with me. And let me know if you can see this. We are in very good hands today. We have a stellar lineup of speakers, and I can't wait to dive into this enigmatic part of the world. So remember to add your questions in the chat, and we make sure that they get answered. And yeah, let's get into it. First of all, thank you to our guests for being here. And I'm going to start with Leifer. Hi, Leifer. If you can please introduce yourself and please take us into the market overview.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Leifer. I work at the Iceland Music Export Office, and I'm the head of international, sort of. So I'm the export manager. Iceland Music is just a traditional music export office, as I'm sure, or at least the European participants should be familiar with this model. We are mainly funded by the Ministry of Business and Culture in Iceland, with also the addition of Business Iceland and Collection Society and a few more entities. What we do is it's twofold. We do a lot of educational events and stuff for the grassroots music community here, helping local artists getting their careers off the ground, with the goal of working internationally. So we do that, and also we support them out. We support the artists out there in the field once they start getting booked for, showcase festivals. We also help with funding on some fronts for travel. Logistics for artists that are based here are pretty challenging, so we definitely need to help out on that front, with us being a small island up here in the North Atlantic, with so bands pretty much have to fly anywhere they want to go. We also feel that our role is important to support artists in the beginning of their careers, because it's you could say that there is music industry infrastructure is, like, you could say that it's lacking in Iceland for the most part. There are not very many companies or individuals based in Iceland that have ambitions to work internationally, apart from the artists, obviously. So it's very common for artists here when they start getting international, get noticed internationally, that they have to relocate to somewhere else. It's very common for them to go to the UK, for example, or to the States to be able to work with labels, managers, and agents, stuff like that. So yes, so that's what we do also. Actually, we also help out the local music festivals here that are trying to attract international music industry delegates and stuff like that. And we have, well, the Iceland Iceland Airwaves is the most famous festival, and we run a conference during the festival days, and they book sort of like it's in the genre of sort of like indie rock, if you would. And this is the most important platform that we have here locally to showcase our artists to the international music industry in the year. I would think we also do have a good jazz festival, Reykjavik Jazz, at the end of summer, and just coming up in a few weeks, we have Dark Music Days Festival, which is in the genre of contemporary classical music. So these are sort of like our three main posts that happen in the year here, and we do press a liaison around these and help out with the support of Business Iceland to bring out international delegates to these conferences. Well, having said all this, we got a market analysis of the Icelandic market released, of the Icelandic music market released in March of this year, and I feel that it gives a pretty thorough overview of the music market here. We could start off by saying that the size of the market is very small. We only have just under 400,000 people living on the whole island, and the majority of the population is living in the Reykjavik or the major Reykjavik area. That kind of makes it a pretty challenging market to import into. But we still have international artists passing through here on tour, and it's almost always the scenario is that they are stopping over here on cross-Atlantic travel, going tour from Europe to play. So the Iceland show will always be the first or the last show of the tour, and then they take advantage of a free layover from the local airline and get in touch with a promoter here in Iceland to help out with the show. And this happens many times in the year. We've had, as a sort of probably a lot of countries in Europe, we've had a lot of live music venues closing down post-pandemic, so we're kind of lacking this sort of like a mid-sized concert venue at the moment that's capacity between maybe 1,000 and 2,000. We have venues up to 1,000 capacity, and then pretty much nothing until like 4,000 or 5,000. So that can make it also a pretty challenging stop. There is not really any touring to be done here, so this will always be one-off shows. Or if acts get booked to a festival, say like Iceland Airwaves, then that's also a very common scenario. I would like to address that maybe we have obviously had very many successful artists globally come out of Iceland through the years, with the Sugar Cubes paving the way in the late 80s, and many more to follow. And we have a very prominent talent with export ambitions at the current time, and we have very recent examples of Icelandic artists blowing up globally. But you could say that the artists that we are supporting in the most capacity, they don't really have a strong following here in the home market, with exceptions obviously, but the general rule is that Icelandic artists, they are either strong in their home market or they have international ambitions to work internationally. And it's not very common for those acts to have a strong home base, to have sort of like a steady revenue stream from the home market, for example. And this is why we put emphasis on supporting the acts from here financially also. Our target markets that we put focus on in the export is it's North America. We do a handful of showcase events there in the year, normally 4 or 5. We do South by Southwest, and then we do Taste of Iceland mini festivals in a few different cities around the States, and then we do pretty much all of the major European showcase festivals. And maybe I'm going off topic with this is probably not relevant to the Icelandic market anymore, but I would think that we have a pretty healthy market in terms of the sort of like end consumer of music here. I think the overall like turnover of music sales here locally in last year was probably somewhere around between 9 and 10 million euro in retail. It's both streaming and physical. So I mean, again, it is a very small market. The split between international catalog and local catalog on the streaming services here is roughly around 80% international and 20% local catalog. But the radio play is slightly different than Icelandic catalog is over 30% of airplay against just under 70% international. So in terms of the music companies that are working here, there is the publishing environment here in Iceland has been developing quite recently, just in the recent years, with companies like EACEA, for example, starting here in Iceland. I would say that many of the managers that we work with on our export acts, they are, I mean, many of them are based abroad. Like Nick, for example, we worked closely with him on a couple of his projects before. Booking agents, there are hardly any labels with international ambitions either, well, with exceptions, but the common way for Icelandic bands is to relocate to Europe or the States when they start to get international traction. Do you want me to touch up on anything else at this point, or?
Maybe how does the radio and also marketing, what's the role of these two points in music, in international and also in-house?
On radio and marketing? Yeah. Okay, so with Iceland being a very small market, we encourage normally the artists that we work with to get as much press as they possibly can in Iceland, because it's sort of like a low-hanging fruit. It's pretty easy to get the press here locally. We get approached by international labels a lot, especially if they're doing a release with an Icelandic act, that they feel that it's important that the release gets some media traction in the local market. There is a handful of people doing PR independently here in Iceland, but that's but the turnover there is pretty fast. But like a radio plugging, stuff like that is very much done on a DIY sort of basis. And I feel like many people go through some connection that they have locally already when they want to focus on some marketing activities in Iceland, whether it being a show promotion, radio plugging, or PR for an album release, for example. People can reach out to us at Iceland Music if they need consulting on that front. We get a lot of those requests, and you can just contact us via our website, icelandmusic.is. And yeah, that pretty much sums it up, I would think.
Thank you so much, Leifur. And I am going to continue. Nick, hi, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, I'm Nick. I've been involved in one way or another with Icelandic music for about 20 years. Not about exactly 20 years. I first went over to Iceland in 2004 while I was working in the media. So I was working with Krang magazine, rock and metal magazine. We went over to Iceland Airways for the first time, and it was it was amazing. And if you haven't been to Iceland Airways, you should go. And it basically started me on my path to where I am now. So I'm currently an artist manager, specialize in Icelandic artists, entirely, I would say, export focused. I do some local activity, work with people like Iceland Sync, who Brynja works with, who we've done concerts with in Iceland. But I work with an artist called Sunna Margaret's, Adis Evansson, and Sole. But yeah, so, and also we work very, very closely with Leifur, with Iceland Music. Yeah, so I've been sort of kicking around for about 20 years now, one way or another. Become kind of known for being one of those Iceland guys.
Thank you, Nick. Brynja.
Yes, hi. My name is Brynja. I work for a company called Iceland Sync Creative. It's a company that's been around for 10 years now. Started out as a management company to begin with, but now for the past 3 or 4 years, also adding me to a company and another booking agent. We're like 4 today. We're pretty much, I guess we could say we wear most of the hats. We do like bookings, we do management, we do sync and publishing and everything in between. In Iceland, you have to wear many hats. It's a tiny market, and yeah, you kind of have to jump in many different roles during the week sometimes, but which makes it fun as well. But my background is I was a professional musician before, and also worked at the Iceland PRO staff, it's called. So yeah, I've been on both ends, I guess I can say, and now, like Leifur said, publishing is starting to like make its mark on the Icelandic market today, and I've been in this department for still 3 years now. We started publishing at Iceland Sync, and Inni at Colum and Inni, and they have also been in publishing as well. I think 4 years, at least a little bit longer than we have. So. And then we also have another company in publishing here in Iceland called Wise Music. They are big in Europe and also North America, but they all opened up like their office, I think 2 years ago. They have one employee here as well. So
thank you
yes.
so much. Thank you so much, Brynja.
Thank you.
And Colm.
Hi, I'm Colm. I've been here for 10 years in Iceland. I'm originally from Ireland. And I started in kind of live music. I was in bands and a sort of touring guitarist. And then I kind of came to Iceland and kind of fell in love with the place. Started working at a label in a studio, and then 5 years ago, set up INI with a composer called Atli Arvidsson. I guess the reason we set it up was because there wasn't really a publishing scene in Iceland, and a lot of artists had deals previously abroad, and there was kind of a need for an on-the-ground company that could sort of work on the ground and sort of go through the trials and tribulations of the publishing industry. So we have 8 recording studios here in downtown Reykjavik, and we have our composers and artists in those rooms. We have a residency room, and then we have a large sort of Studio A where we can do grand piano strings and things like that. Mainly we're export focused. A lot of our artists do TV and film abroad, have had careers previously, but sort of, you know, look at Iceland as it's kind of a perfect incubator space. It's a great place to come and sort of meet other artists and get ideas. And I think that's a huge strength of Iceland. I think if you're coming to kind of break Iceland, I don't think it's not hard in a way. You just go to a bar one night and, you know, you've pretty much met a lot of people in Iceland. But I think the strengths are sort of the collaboration. Like we have a sort of global deal with Warp Publishing. So we have their offices in London and LA. I'm sort of on the ground in Reykjavik. So I'm working with the artists every day and sort of finding opportunity, and I travel a lot to kind of bring in work to our artists in Iceland. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's a perfect space to kind of be an artist. I think that's a huge part of it. You know, it's a lot of people have their own studios. You have access to great orchestras, musicians, great writers, great producers. The amount of talent here it still shocks me all the time. It constantly shocks me all the time. But there's artists I don't even know and producers who are doing amazing things that I don't even know of. And then we have a strong film and TV market here. We have a lot of film composers like Olafur Arnalds and A.D. Stevenson, who works with Nick, and Ben Frost, Dustin O'Halloran, Herdís, Stefan Stoder, Sindri, Captain Holm. So there's a lot of film composers here. So what's been great is sort of being able to work on those projects internationally from Iceland.
Right.
Which is kind of amazing that artists don't have to move to Berlin anymore or move to Los Angeles or London. So Iceland Music Export have been very helpful, sort of connecting the dots for a lot of people here, sending us out to different conferences and sort of supporting the scene. So I think if you're an artist looking to maybe come to Iceland, I think coming to it with a collaborative sense is probably the best way to do it. You know, find out the artists that are doing things you like, and it's very easy to sort of get introduced to an artist that you like. It's very, very, very easy here. You know, everybody knows each other, so it's a very small community. Yeah.
Right. So that answers my question, which is, you know, what are the biggest challenges for international artists trying to break into the Icelandic scene, and how they can overcome them. Is there anything else that you can advise?
I think a good start is just, you know, having a sort of an artist on the ground that you know. I think that really helps. Like we just had a composer from New Zealand who came here this weekend, and he was working on a film score. He recorded with Sinfonia Nord in Akureyri, and there's a 25% rebate if you work with the orchestras or studios in Iceland. So for him, it was quite competitive to come to Iceland. And then he spent a day at our studio recording the Haldoraphone, which is this really beautiful, unique Icelandic instrument. And his director came over. So for him, it was like this perfect space to kind of get this thing made and also meet some great musicians and sort of get inspired. And then I guess we have a few venues like Mengi, which is kind of an experimental venue. And we have Harpa, of course, which is like the main concert hall, but yeah, definitely a lot harder to fill that unless you're quite a well-known artist. But you know, there isn't a huge amount of venues to kind of, you know, just to come fly over and play if you're kind of a smaller artist. It takes a little bit of getting to know the scene and, you know, building a sort of fans and, you know, an audience.
And Nick, based on your experience working internationally, how does Iceland's music market compare to others in terms of collaboration and networking opportunities?
In Iceland itself?
Yeah.
Well,
in comparison to other markets.
I think Iceland's quite unique in many ways, but I think one of the reasons it's really unique is because it's so incredibly small. So the population of Iceland is small anyway, but the creative population is even smaller, and everyone knows each other. And so, you know, to give live examples of, you know, one of my artists, Adis, who's a neoclassical pianist and composer, has collaborated with Oliver Arnold, was on his rework album, Grammy-nominated rework album. You know, and there's all these kind of opportunities, I think, that come through quite often. People like Oli's really great because he will, you know, he will sort of help, you know, newer artists, which I think is really nice. And I think there generally is an attitude that, you know, that Iceland is so small, and, you know, relatively speaking, there aren't that many Icelandic artists, so there's kind of room for everyone in the world. So it is this sort of, I think, let's say the UK, which is bitterly competitive, you know, because the opportunities are sort of scarce. There's sort of heavy, you know, sort of demand, is sort of supply focus. I think in Iceland, you know, there is enough talent, there's enough opportunities for every single Icelandic artist to be one way or another successful somewhere in their kind of space within the world. So I think that opens up kind of a quite unique spirit, this sort of really helpful, creative, collaborative spirit. And also, I mean, Iceland itself, you know, I think it sort of has a long, you know, going back thousands of years, it's a very creative place. You know, it values the written word, the spoken word. Obviously, the sagas come from Iceland. And I think Iceland's more connected with its past culturally than most countries, you know, day to day. So I think there's, you know, on top of that being a sort of social place, I think within the sort of the depths of the Icelandic soul is this sort of very strong literary tradition, and they respect, you know, and artists are respected, you know, and and I you know, it's very difficult to you know, to you know, I cannot sing the praises enough of the organizations in Iceland as well, you know, like Iceland Music, for example, who just do so much to sort of help that too, you know, and help that flourish and connect people, and, you know, obviously help export that as well. But yeah, I don't.
Would this be one of the main events where international managers and artists can start making those connections? So let's say someone that doesn't have any connections in Iceland, where do they start?
Go to Iceland Airwaves.
Airwaves, yeah.
It was my introduction, yeah, and I went over. I'm not a writer, but I was going over as sort of part of the media, and you immediately, I think, you know, you know, now it's even better because there's a conference. You know, 20 years ago it was just a music festival. But Iceland Airwaves, you know, I think if you're, you know, what you'll also meet as well are like-minded souls, because Iceland draws a certain type of international professional, yeah, and there's a kind of a nice filter, yeah. So you know you're probably going to get on with someone if you meet them at an Iceland Airwaves conference, and then just, you know, be sociable around Airwaves, you know. And again, you know, the Iceland Music guys do an incredible job of, you know, putting, you know, for international industry, putting on events, and yeah. So there you go. So a long answer.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you. Thanks. Brynja, how does Iceland's sync market operate, and what tips would you give to managers trying to tap into this space?
It's a good question. The Icelandic sync market, it's it's a little bit strange because, like, producers in Iceland, they kind of work not usually by the book when it comes to sync and stuff. So sometimes they will call us afterwards, like, yeah, we're releasing this, you know, film or TV show, whatever, and we realized we had to, you know, get a permission or license the song, you know, and that's like tomorrow and stuff like that. So that's a problem with the sync environment here in Iceland. Like the producers are not very educated about all this, but it has been improving, and also with, you know, the record in Iceland and all that stuff, and we're getting bigger projects and stuff like that. You know, Netflix and, you know, those bigger companies are filming here, and it's getting better. But there's also a lot of at least that's my experience. There's a lot of like buyouts. They're like, they just hire a composer to do the entire score. Yeah, so it varies a lot, but it's there's also like library music and stuff coming in as well. But I don't know, maybe Colm has also an input on this one, because we've only been operating in the sync department. I mean, since Iceland Sync has been up and running, we have had a few syncs, but not like actively since maybe like 3 years ago or something. But maybe, I don't know, do you have any more input on this, Colm?
Yeah, I mean, I think locally, as you mentioned, it's very, a producer working on a film or TV show in Iceland.
Yeah.
They know the artist. They like I
It's just
remember
a phone call to a friend or whatever.
Basically, I remember a guy asking for a song and he sent the artist a big leg of lamb. That was sort of the deal. And because a lot of artists here don't have publishing deals and they own their music, a lot of these deals can be done just over the phone. But it has changed a lot now, and there's a lot of really people sort of understand publishing, the publishing world a little bit more. Before they didn't know what the master meant or what publishing meant, and it's changed a lot. Like 10 years ago, it was a bit
It
of
was
a
crazy.
crazy for a lot of artists because they're just, and as well, there's not really a lot of these TV shows are just in Iceland. You know what I mean? There's not a massive international presence. But now things have changed. Like Netflix have been doing co-productions here. So the scene is sort of really building. We always get a lot of requests for people who like need Icelandic music for an episode of a show that was shot in Iceland, and they want to work with local music. But a lot of our sync would be mainly kind of international, and trying to we are an Icelandic company, but we're trying to get the music into international shows, and that's a great way to market an artist and break an artist. And we've been scoring mainly internationally as well. I don't think we've done a whole pile of Icelandic films or in the last
And do
one.
you work with international artists or mainly with local artists?
Local artists who are more focused internationally, yeah,
Right.
would be the
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, we are more local.
Okay.
So I mean, Brynja works with a lot of great producers who do a lot kind of abroad and do a lot of co-writes abroad, and play and sell out venues here. So she kind of has a really great roster of like maybe the best kind of pop and upcoming producers. And then for us, we kind of have artists who maybe had careers abroad, who wanted to stay in Iceland, and we're trying to find other opportunities for them to sort of sustain a career, essentially. Like a lot of the artists used to tour, were in big bands, but now they want to score, they want to, spend 6 months on a film score rather than leaving the country. So a lot of it is outreach internationally. We go to the States a lot, London a lot, and then having the company Warp, who sort of have outreach in different territories, really helps. So we sort of think of ourselves more as like kind of an incubator to sort of work with the artists, be here with them, sort of guide them through it. And my office is in the building as well, so we can kind of workshop things and sort of work together on projects. And it's been good, and we've had a lot of big international films come through here. And because Iceland is so small, you sort of meet a lot of these big productions that come to Iceland, So it is like, it has a lot of advantages, because I think Iceland is just sort of this, when you mention Iceland to people, they're like, oh, wow, okay, great. Wow. I love Iceland, right? The music's amazing, Björk and Sigur Rós. But I think you get a lot of artists that come through, and because it's a little bit of a mysterious scene in Iceland, a lot of artists come here with their shields down a little bit, and they just kind of want to meet other artists and sort of collaborate. So I think it's a perfect place to kind of send one of your artists to just come here, spend a week, do some meetings, meet some people. And I think that's a really great way to look at Iceland. It's like it's like paradise kind of for artists, I think, in a way.
And
Yeah,
also we like
interest.
Colm said, we do like Iceland Sync host like a lot of camps. That's our way to export our artists. So we try to get people into Iceland, which is an exciting place to do songwriting camps, and also export our artists, like I said before. So yeah, that's also a good way to come and get connections, expand your network. So
Find inspiration.
inspiration as well. Yeah, definitely. And also like meet the local writers and producers, you know what I mean? If you wanna
Yeah.
People.
Leifur, I wanted to know if there are any particular metrics or milestones you look for in emerging artists before they are considered in major opportunities in Iceland.
Yeah, it's like it depends on sort of like the market that they are trying to get into, and normally we try to look at which partnerships they already have in the market that they want to export into, and if that's a party that we can sort of like engage with, then we feel like it's probably a good opportunity for and we'll get a good we'll get a good investment on our financial investment and the time we put into the project. If we have another partner, normally it's one of the three. They have a label already, they have management, or they're working with a good agent, sort of. So it's like normally it's one of the three. Then they by definition sort of become export ready in our books. And but it's been touched upon here already in this conversation, but we have a head start over some of the other countries just because of the general interest that is in Iceland. Like Colin mentioned, like I will have like the showcase festival bookers, they will always reach out to me with a list of people that they're thinking of booking, and then we sort of like have a bit of a back and forth, like if we think it's a good time for the artists, and if it's aligns with their strategy to go into that market. And so we are like never sort of like pushing anything. So we always try to, I always, like, if there is interest in the act, there is like organic interest, or they already have, following or an audience that has they've organically gained, then I kind of feel like I can work with that. But I know some other export offices, they approach it from a different angle. They are pushing their acts onto the showcase festival bookers and different things. We don't really have the resources or time to do that, which I probably think is a good thing in the end, because it's, it kind of, then the like once the acts they're put in front of us, then we can sort of like go with that. We already have partnerships, then the projects will grow so much more, and we'll get more for our investment and more for our time that we're spending on the project. That's sort of how that works. I'd maybe like to address one thing that has been brought up here in this conversation. Colin mentioned earlier the recording rebate. That is actually a project that we manage at Iceland Music Export, and Brynja has already dropped the link in the chat. It kind of goes back to what Nick also mentioned, that there is a lot of tradition for the creative industries here in Iceland, and it started way back when, like when the country was first, when the settlers came here, and it's always been a major part of our culture has been the creative industries. And I feel like there's an understanding from the government officials there. The creative industries are now adding up to just under 4% of the total GDP of Iceland, which is pretty impressive. It's coming neck to neck with the fishing industry, actually, which we're very pleased with. And one of the sort of like the long-term investments that the government of Iceland has done is that a film rebate was started here just over 20 years ago. And the goal of that was to attract major film productions to come here to Iceland to shoot. And so they have been gathering this data from the economic impact of that from this whole time. And to have like Star Wars come here and shoot, and Batman or whatever, like people see that in the movies, and they come and visit because of that. And the government has seen that every krona that they spend on the rebate, they get back into the economy six times. So it's like it's an investment that really pays off. But one of the long-term benefits of the initiative is that now we have production companies here in Iceland who are able to facilitate these productions of the highest level, and this was not the case just like 10 years ago. This means more jobs in film locally, more knowledge stays within Iceland, and people can work on their profession here in Iceland. And this was the catalyst for the Record in Iceland project that Colin mentioned earlier. So they have made the initiative also available for audio productions. And what that means is that, like Colin mentioned, his New Zealand friend came here to do an orchestra score. Is that once the music you work on here is released, you can get 25% refund from the government on what you spent on the production of the music. And so what we are hoping for is that this will also help grow the sort of like music industry infrastructure locally over time, so that we can like home grow talent for longer, and to make this sort of like a prosperous environment for music companies to like work and thrive. So you guys can check out the page if you want. It's like, to be eligible for the refund, you only need to put out 14 minutes of music. So it's common for artists when they stop over here on tour, for example, that they can make a little EP or a recording, and that will even you also get refund on like travel and lodging, so that can even like offset your tour budget by like 25%. So there are different ways of utilizing this, and I always encourage people to get in touch also directly if they are seriously thinking about taking advantage of this. So because it kind of like varies case by case how it's best for a project to utilize this, but yeah, we very much try to encourage everyone to use it if it's possible at all.
Definitely a great incentive. Nick, what advice would you give to managers who want to book gigs or tours in Iceland?
In Iceland?
Yes.
I'm probably not the right person to ask that. I think Brynja might have probably the most insight. My focus is almost entirely export.
Export,
so
yeah.
Bringing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take that one. I would say, I mean, get in touch with, company like us. I don't know, maybe Colin would have some info as well on that, but yeah, find a booking agent, a local one, or a company that serves that purpose. And I mean, it really depends on, is it a big band or is it just one small artist or whatever? I don't know, but I would say get connection with some professional locals on the ground and take the steps from there. It really depends on, the venue and what are you going to do? What's the main goal? But like you mentioned, touring, I don't know. Touring is not like, I don't know if any international artist has ever toured Iceland. Do you know that, guys?
It will be more like a one-off.
Yeah.
Well, it's more
maybe
like
one or two gigs. Yeah, but Icelandic artists do that often. Like they have gigs in small venues and churches and stuff around Iceland. But international, no. But because the venues are like tiny, we're talking about like a couple of hundreds of people, maybe up to 500. I don't know. So it's yeah, it's fine if you want to do it in the city. If you find a decent venue, like Mengi is a nice venue, but it's small. But if you want to go to Harpa, the main conference hall is like the biggest one that we have here. It's also expensive. But yeah, I would say get in touch with, like for us, for example, or maybe Leifur could help as well, or even Colin. But I think that would be the best bet to at least start with.
And
Sorry, I was
Yes,
just gonna make a point. Like a lot of artists that do play a show here probably are here recording a record, or you know, they're involved somehow on something else, because it is obviously
Yeah,
expensive to get a band over here, and unless you're very well known, it's very hard to make money on that, because you know the market here is quite local focused. There's, you know, a lot of the local artists will be able to sell these venues, but international artists, it's really hard here, really difficult. It'd take a very specific artist to kind of, you know, fill a room here, even a small room, you know, for a pretty
exactly.
large artist. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Actually,
the regional presence versus a strong digital social media profile, does it play a big role in this?
I think because we're so isolated, we're like, I think the taste of music is like really locally focused, you know what I mean? Anything outside that is really difficult, you know, to get stuck and, you know, get any interest, to be honest. So sounds like we're like weird people that don't listen to other people's music, but breaking into the market, it's I think it's so isolated. It's really, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a hard one.
even just to sort of add, I do have some insight actually. There are certain genres that don't really sell tickets in Iceland that can do really well outside Iceland. So going back to Ada Evensen, pianist and composer within the world of Niels Fram and Olafur, does pretty well. You know, can sell out, you know, 300 cap venues, and you know, but she can't even sell 50 tickets in Reykjavik, because that type of music, even though it's sort of much of it's born in Iceland, does not actually listen to in Iceland. And I think the popular genres tend to be, you know, it's hip hop, you know. So I think it's Icelandic pop, you know, and it's Icelandic hip hop, which is quite unique, obviously, to Icelandic, especially to Iceland, especially if it's sung in Icelandic. So it's yeah, it can be a tough one, even for Icelandic artists that are doing well overseas.
Right. So we have a question from Hope. What is the most popular genre in Iceland when it comes to festivals as well?
Right.
I would say pop and hip hop. What do you think, Lever?
Yeah, yes. For maybe, yeah, on this topic, I feel like what's the acts that do the best locally, they're definitely pop and hip hop in Icelandic. And there is very little overlap with I mean, the local industry is able, like there are a few local artists that are able to sustain from that market, and that's totally fine. But it's those artists very rarely have any export ambitions, so it's kind of it's very compartmentalized. And like I said earlier, the export artists, they hardly ever have any like like a steady revenue stream coming from their home market, for example. So I mean, I do a lot of like data analysis for Icelandic artists, like streaming numbers and stuff in different markets, and I would think like what the acts that people sort of like associate most with Iceland, and then I mean, if you will, the brand of Iceland music. I know that's pretty sketchy concept, but like people will think about the rock bands like of Monsters and Men and Sigur Rós, then Sigur Rós are kind of like crossing over to like the ethereal space of neoclassical artists and film composers. Obviously is like that's like people associate that heavily with Icelandic music, with just all the major composers that we had come out of Iceland in the past years, like Hildur Guðnadóttir and the late Jóhann Jóhannsson, Ólafur Arnalds. Like I would say that they are sort of like the torch bearers for us, and also like indie rock artists probably. So those two, I would say.
And what trends are shaping Iceland's music scene right now? Like, and what role does the streaming play in artist discovery and promotion?
In what? What did you say?
Trends in
Trends.
yeah.
Difficult one. It's kind of, I mean, there's
Yeah.
for such a small place, there's sort of every genre exists here in a way. You
Yeah,
know,
kind of.
there's like a really healthy pop scene. There's obviously the more sort of neoclassical, contemporary music, a massive classical, a lot of great classical musicians here in Iceland. And I think it's interesting because, you know, I think a lot of younger artists here are sort of, I don't know, like there's like a lot of artists that are getting into film and TV music and more sort of, you know, at least the ones that I would meet, you know. And then there's like some great indie bands here as well. Like it's like, and then there's a huge metal scene here as well that does really well internationally. There's like I meet people abroad and they're like, oh, I love this Icelandic metal band, and I'm no idea who they are, you know. Everything
It is a little
sort of
bit of everything.
exists. Yeah, everything
Yeah.
sort of exists in its little ecosystem here, even though it's such a small place. Yeah, so I don't know, it's hard to kind of, yeah, it's hard to put that into into a good.
It's not like there's like one trend going on in one genre that's like pushing everything aside or anything like that. It's like Colm said, like every genre kind of has space, which is very weird in this tiny market.
Yeah.
But it's like going really, really well, and it's yeah, it has even bigger space than you would imagine within this tiny market, which is kind of strange.
If you were to look at the Spotify streaming viral charts and the kind of the top, you know, the top 50 charts, the top 10 is heavily dominated by bands and artists from Iceland, you know, Icelandic hip hop and pop. And I think the trends kind of reflects international trends, you know, because I think international trends are more, I mean, music trends now are more international than they've ever been. A lot of it's coming out of America, obviously. And I think that's reflected, but there's much greater representation of local artists who do really, really well. You know, in Briette, who's looked after by Iceland Sync as an example. Yeah, but also I think sometimes it feels like it's hyper amplified because it's such a small. Trends seem to be hyper contagious in Iceland because of this, because everything's really connected. And then, you know, so for example, you know, where Colm's world of film and TV composers is it's on fire. There's so much talent in Iceland. I think that's I think people look at, for example, Hilda Gudnadóttir, and to see someone like that and they sort of look up to her and go, okay, she can win an Oscar and all these awards for you know, for Joker, for example, and she's, you know, she's a friend of a friend, so it kind of feels doable.
Exactly. Yes.
You know, she's my cousin, so I can do it, you know, and I think there's something quite uniquely Icelandic about that as well.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I got festivals reaching out to me, you know, talking about trends. You know, I have sort of like within those like electronic music and metal that have like all of these kind of like subgenres that you can go very deep. I have festivals reaching out and say like, hey, I'm thinking about book this band and I never heard about them, and I go check them out and go like, whoa, like they got a crazy thing going like within that niche. So that happens all the time. But I feel like we sometimes talk about this, that like the lack of music industry infrastructure here in Iceland has kind of also like it is a double-edged sword. It kind of like it keeps the creativity like it's not really focused on any material gains. Like kids are not trying to write for radio. They're not trying to write to get signed to a label. Like they're just creating for the sake of the creation, like for the art. So that kind of, it also maintains sort of like a bit of a purity, which I think is very valuable. So Yeah, and that kind of, I think that's in the end what makes like the unique things that come out of here that sounds like nothing else, you know. It's like, so it's not necessarily such a bad thing to not really have an industry. It's like you can look
Yeah,
at
but I want to add to that, Lever. I also, I mean, I definitely agree with you on that one. But there was no infrastructure here. You know, there wasn't any options. That's why they all got signed abroad. You know, the ones who made it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so, but that's changing. You know, with Indie and with us and with the Vice Music opening up an office here as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
You
And
know,
right now, what are the key events, music events, festivals, showcases where you know, international artists and managers can
Airwaves.
I think
definitely.
Airwaves is probably it is the biggest one.
The biggest one, yeah.
are there any others
There's
around
like
the year?
Dark Music Days, which is sort of a kind of a classical festival that's in January, and that has quite a lot of international pull for people more in the kind of more experimental world.
The jazz festival.
There's a jazz festival as well. Yeah, and I guess that's kind of it, really. There used to be a summer festival, but that's gone now.
Mm.
But yeah, I think Airwaves. I think if you're in Europe and you have a band and you want to get them into Iceland, I think Airwaves is like the best one to go to because you have a lot of really interesting people come for it. You know, I think people who are seeking out something quite original will come to Iceland, I think, you know. It's, you know, a lot of great delegates come through because of Iceland Music and Airwaves. So a lot of great bookers, just a lot of great people come over and music supervisors and just everyone and everyone. I think that's a great festival to go to because it's quite small, it's very accessible. Yeah, and I think that would be my, like, if I had a band and I was in, you know, in Europe somewhere, I think that would be the festival I'd be like, let's do Airwaves, you know. And then even to try and like start building some connections with artists in Iceland while you're sort of going through that process, it's a great way to get here, play the festival, and also meet other artists and people in the industry.
And
if
get
possible,
great.
sorry.
I was going to say just and also to use it to get some great international press.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
International press is incredible that goes to Airwaves.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, it doesn't hurt if you can stay like, you know, come in a couple of days earlier or stay a little bit after, you know, to make the most of the visit. You know, I think that will help us help a lot as well if you're trying to, you know, break into the market and stuff like that. So
yeah,
And
I work for Airwaves also. It's we get like the level of press we get again, it's the Iceland is an attractive place to visit for that's why we have like the industry, we get out the press, we get out, it's like the quality is like way out of proportion with the size of like us or the market or whatever. And I keep telling my bands, like they come to me and say like, oh, we want to like tour abroad and like blah, 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 and go to the showcase festivals to meet people. And I'm like, but you should like, you just go to Airwaves. It's like in our backyard and you got, and the conference part is so small. You got great access to all these people. It's actually, yeah, it's actually like that's what I encourage the local bands to do. Like first, that's the easiest part for them.
And my last question for each one of you would be if there is any other practical advice that that you would give managers looking to collaborate with Icelandic artists and professionals.
Just be bold and reach out to them.
yeah,
It's so
reach
small.
out.
Yeah, no, it's so small that everyone knows each other.
Yeah.
Leifers are really good at having the oversight of everybody. So I think Leif is probably the best person as the first protocol. But me, I mean, I'm my you know, I focus on my three artists, but Carl and Brynja, you know, talk to people, connect. Everyone's very friendly in Icelandic music.
Yeah.
Like Nick said, we're small. I mean, everybody knows everybody. We're just, you know, usually it's just a phone call away or email away.
Mm. And when is the best time to go to Iceland?
It's a good
As
question.
a manager,
It's either you want northern lights or loads of daylight.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
it depends on your taste.
Two different type of
Yeah.
Totally different
Yeah.
vibe. Totally different vibe.
inspiration.
Summer, if
Yeah.
you're into partying, come during the summer. But if you're into gloom, like
Yeah,
come-
exactly.
Yeah. Send your sad artist in Christmas, and you're more upbeat artist in the summer. Because I mean the way people work is very different at those times as well. People are very up and excited to do things in the summer. In the winter, it's a lot of being locked up in the studio, and which is charming and lovely as well.
Dark.
So
Icelandic melancholia.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
We have a lot of that. Actually, the sad ones could use the sunlight. Someone just wrote.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. But it's just such a small place, and I think Icelandic artists are very receptive to working with artists from
Yeah.
abroad because we all know each other. So
Definitely.
a lot of the time, someone will come work with an artist, and that artist will be like, "Oh, have you met this person?" And then they meet that person, and then all of a sudden, it just the whole city opens up, and you end up at someone's studio, and it's a very I feel like it's an A&R kind of paradise if you're a manager to kind of like there's so if somebody really likes your music, it's very accessible and easy to like meet these people that you wouldn't necessarily normally meet.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I had a dinner with a director that came here a few years ago, and we just had like a little hang at the office, and she was like, "Oh, I'd love to meet, Olafur Arnold. I'd love to meet like Dustin O'Halloran. I'd love to meet." And I was like, "Well, you had dinner with them yesterday here, See, that's the thing. It's like it's so small that no one's really like showing off, or
Yeah.
it's just a very organic sort of space. So it's very easy to meet people and very accessible, and everyone's very friendly. So I think it's a really great place to come because it just doesn't have that kind of businessy attitude in a way. It's just a very like, are you a nice person? Is your music good? Let's work together.
Yeah.
That's kind of the vibe. Yeah, which I love. I think that's what's so special about the
Yeah.
place.
Nothing beats human connection, right? Like
100%.
Exactly. That's what it's all about.
I
Yeah.
think that's the secret to Iceland is the
Yeah.
connection. That's
Yeah.
what you gotta-
Well, we sadly we had come to an end, but I just wanted to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and all your advice, and I hope that everybody gets first to visit Iceland. It sounds amazing. I haven't been yet, and it's on my to-do list. And also that they have taken all the advice that they need, and yeah, just big thank you. And thank you to all our community. This is our last event of the year, and we are already planning 2025, and we are really excited for what's to come, and we just hope to see you there. And thank you for your support. Thank you so much.